So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We are going to be discussing redefining student success beyond the numbers. My name is Shauna Walsh, and I work at Belmont University, which is a mid-sized private institution in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm also part of a Study Tennessee consortium, which is 17 universities in Tennessee. It's a beautiful state. If you've never been there, it's very green. We're very known for music. I'm joined by my two colleagues who will come introduce ourselves. And we're very blessed to have Rita as well representing Indian High School. Do you all want to come up? Remember your size of your institution.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Dr. Dan Harper. I'm from Christian Brothers University in Memphis, Tennessee. We're a small private Catholic university. So one thing that's nice is we have different sizes here as well as different nationalities. So I hope you enjoy the session.
Good afternoon. My name is Caleb Bennett. I represent East Tennessee State University. East Tennessee State University is a mid-sized public institution with over 14,000 students located in the far northeast corner of Tennessee.
Hello everyone, my name is Rita Balachandran. I work as an academic counselor with JVCN International School based out of Mumbai. Our school follows two curriculums, ICSE and IGCSE till grade 10, and we follow an A-level curriculum, so there could be a lot of context related to the curriculum as well. So it will help you, come back with your any sessions, openings related to that as well. And over to Shauna.
All right, so today, this is kind of an outline of what we're going to be discussing today. So we are going to briefly discuss what student success means, and then we're actually going to go through the whole life cycle of the student. So what student success looks like pre-arrival to campus, and also while they're still in high school. We're going to look at it in the college setting, pre-arrival and orientation. Also with student retention at universities, and that involves the community, health, wellness, and academic support. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about graduation and beyond. So to get started, we are going to just open the floor to discussion as to what you think student success means.
Getting good grades.
Getting good grades.
Yes. Being happy.
Being happy.
Overall personality and development.
Overall personality, yeah.
Skills.
Skills.
Responsible.
Being responsible.
Responsible adult.
Being a responsible adult, yeah, that's a good one.
Learning
Senior,
Beyond the academics.
right, recommendation, academics, beyond the academics.
Taking the learning beyond the walls of classroom.
Yeah,
And having the skill of self-management.
yeah, self-management and learning beyond the classroom. These are all really great examples, and I mean, if you search for it, there's no one definition of student success, and I really think it's being pushed that we can't really define it one way because it differs for each student. Each student's so unique, and that's kind of the topic of this session, is just looking at the student as a unique individual and helping meet them where they are to have that holistic development. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Rita, who will begin us with the high school student success.
So morning when I took the cab to come here, and there was an instruction, fasten your seat belt even if you are in the rear seat. 2 days back when I took the flight from Mumbai, and it also again said, some safety instructions. Fasten your seat belt, open your window pane. Now these are instructions which are given to us by the airways or by, the cab companies while they are taking care of us for those 45 minutes or 2 hours. Our students are with us for much more longer period. They are with us for maybe 2 years, maybe 12 years, and we are all preparing them for their success in future. When they go to the universities or colleges, irrespective of their location, where they are going, irrespective of the kind of universities or courses that they are doing, but we are all working towards preparing them. And as Shauna said, the meaning of success could mean very different for each individual. I will be talking about what is our role as counselors and teachers and educators, and how we can prepare them better. I'll also share some of the examples what we are doing, and if there is any learning that you want to take back. So I'm sure each one of you would have also experienced that behind that student's success, there are many people who are involved. Student himself or herself, parents who are a part of their journey, we as educators, and universities and colleges, which also come in picture when they take them, or the hand holding happens from our schools to their next destinations. When they are with us as students, if we help them explore, if we help them discover, because there is so much of change which is happening around, the first part, or there is a shift which is required for our parents also to understand that change. I don't know how many of you would have heard, but I have heard some statements, let them get grades and then we'll figure out which college. Let them get these marks and then we'll decide which country. So there is a parent who's saying that that's a part of what their next journey, and which is dependent on the grades and marks. As students, they are aware of a lot of changes which are happening around, but as educators who are involved with them and working with them, it's for us to learn, share, and evolve. And the reason that you are all here is also that you're wanting to learn more and understand. I have two of my coordinators who became a part of this cohort, who are also working with the students, though they are not there in the role of a career counselor, but every day they meet students and parents, and if they are aware. So as educators, if we can learn and share our learning with what is changing outside, it becomes easier for that student to understand what the meaning of success could be like. For universities who partner with us, come to our schools, or help us understand what is the industry demand, because industry is asking for new skills, and the universities are a bridge between us and the industry, and that takes us to their next step where they will learn more about how they need to be prepared. So I did a survey with some of our students who are alumni. They are working or they are studying in their colleges and universities. We also asked our grade 11 and 12 learners, and I had only two questions for them. What is the meaning of college success for you, and what contributed towards that college success? And if you see, the kind of responses that came, yes, grades were important for them in college because industry may look at their GPAs while they are being placed, or for their internships. But they also said what is the kind of networking that they did, what kind of placement opportunities that they were getting, especially the ones who are working right now, are also meaning of college success to them. Some of them said that university choices or the super curriculars or the extracurriculars that we encourage them during their school years or college years is also helping them towards that success. So you can see the meaning of success is different for a different student, and also sometimes changes with what stage they are in. For the ones who are in school right now to the ones who are in university or the ones who are working. My next question to them was how did the high school experience led to that success? And if you can now see this graph where grades have gone up and extracurriculars have become very, very prominent for them to say that what I did as part of my extracurricular maybe gave me that skill to connect with people, to network with people, and that probably is giving me success. So it's not just about now grades for them. There were subject choices which are also sometimes, so I don't know how many of you have different kind of subject choices in your curriculum, but the kind of subject choices also sometimes define what kind of success that they get, because each one of them, especially when it comes to maths, when it comes to, like in our curriculum, if we have A-level maths, which is like maths and further maths, for some of them even that one choice of subject could add to probably they attaining better placements. they attaining better scores. So it's about meeting them at the right time from the beginning years when they are in grade 8 onwards, where they are allowed to make subject choices, to also guide them what are the kind of subjects which will work. So we even give them a window of normally a month for them to experience before we start the academic year. They can sit through any classes, they can experience those subjects, come back after the end of April when the academic year then has to begin in June, so that they are 100% sure about the kind of combinations that they take. So some of the practices that we follow, where we try and involve our alumni, and I'm sure many of you would be doing that, and our parents, because parents become a very important part of this whole process. Our innovator convention is meant for everyone. It's not a specific student or a group of students who participate, but it's each and every child, because meaning of success or success is for every child. Success is not only for those who are toppers of the batch, where their marks or grades or their ranks get published, but even for the ones who probably have success defined in a different strength that they have. So some of the initiatives, when our alumni come, we start our alumni meets right from grade 8 upwards. Give an exposure, topics change with every kind of group of students that they come and address, but the kind of questions which are being asked and everything is student led. So over time, what I've been with JBCN now for 6 years, but over time I've seen that in these years, even our practices are changing, our work is changing. So as educators, it takes time for us to understand what works for students. How do they get exposure? If our first slide said that yes, we need to give them exposure and help them discover, we need to bring those practices right from early years when they are given exposure through the alumni who will come back and address them based on the kind of grades that they are from. So questions for an 8th grader alumni meet could be different than 9th and 10th grade to the grade AS and A2, or which is 11th and 12th for us. Our master classes are initially, it was about asking time from teachers that can you give us time and we can organize bio sessions or chemistry sessions. And now with the 2 recent classes which happened in the last 10 days, I have teachers who have started coming back and saying, can you organize a master class for our subject? So it's a change which happens. Yes, they learn in their curriculum. Yes, they have topics which are as part of the curriculum and the teachers are supposed to cover that. But our master classes also tell them about, similar subject, but maybe different topics. Yes. Parents are, yes, an integral part of our school culture. Our cricket meets are like IPLs. There are auctions which are done, which involves parents to the extent that when we ask them for supporting us, because they are part of the school through all these fun activities, they're always willing to help us in a lot of initiatives. So how we prepare them before they fly is through skills that we encourage them to do or learn. We introduce an internship drive for all our grade 8 upward learners, but because it was grade 8, so it was more of an apprenticeship where they worked with any organization, but everything was organized by our parents. We reached out to them asking them that please host our, we don't want to send them to any other organization. They are much younger kids. We want them to experience what that industry is all about. And in our first year of initiative, we got around 200 apprenticeship from our parents itself. So there was a drive which led through the whole process of making CVs, going through, interviews, getting rejections as well. So to face that rejection itself is a process of learning, and then that leads to success. And one of that initiative, which now the parents are saying that, we want more people to join us and we want more parents to become a part of this. So when they go to the universities and they do their internships there, if they've gone through the whole process, maybe in much simpler way, It helps them to understand how to prepare CVs. It helps them also to understand how to go through the interviews. Similar to that is when we are, nurturing values. Nurturing values, though we all as schools do a lot of activities, taking them for community work, but many of our students start work with the school helping staff itself. There was an initiative, I remember 2 years back, when some of them came forward, said, we want to initiate with an initiative called as Bet and Better, where they taught English language conversation to all our helping staff in the school. They called doctors who came and taught them about basic hygiene, taught them financial literacy through some experts. So if we start with that community work within the school and people who are surrounding them on a daily basis, you automatically will lead to people who will go back and contribute to the community when they go to their colleges. We also do lot of support or take lot of support in terms of integrating career guidance with academics. Our career guidance curriculum is introduced in grade 6 onwards. For the first 3 years, that is 6th, 7th and 8th, we don't talk about careers. It's just a self-reflection journey. It's just about knowing yourself better. It's about SWOT analysis. It's about knowing your own skills. The initiative keeps changing when they are in grade 9 and 10. We take support from our teachers because our bandwidth is very limited. There are only 2 people in the career guidance team in the school with 1900 students. But at the same time, our teachers are now equipped. They are the ones who are taking those initiatives in the classes. We only train the teachers and then they take it forward. So sometimes why I'm sharing this, because these are the kind of probably challenges that you also may face in your own school. But taking support from the teachers itself is when teachers come back and say, okay, this is what happened in that SWOT analysis when I was doing, or this kind of child shared this practice. So those are learnings for them, and that also encourages them to probably go for more learning on their part, get aware of what is happening around in the world, what kind of skills are required, and then help these learners back or the students back. So support from all the staff, because there is limitation in terms of number of career counselors in the school. Support from all the other staff is also equally required, and they become the whole part of the process. So the learning then is not restricted only to the subject. It's not just restricted to the marks or the grades. Yes, teachers are asked those kind of, at the end of the year, how their batch performed. But at this stage, learning goes beyond, because the teacher is also working with them very closely from their grade, much younger grades. Only once they come to grade 9 and 10 that we start talking about careers. Till then, 3 years we give them only for self-reflections. And that, I'm sure the results will be seen much later in life, but that's how the practices has been evolving. So before we hand over our students to the universities and institutions, as much as it is their responsibility to make them successful for the industry, we have a bigger role because they are with us for a much more longer period as compared to the 4 years that they spend or 2 years that they spend at the university. So the more we work from the beginning stages, the more we, help them understand the meaning of success, which could be different for different people, the more I think they'll be able to take care of it. That goes to Caleb now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about, and really the perfect lead in and transition into what I'm going to talk about, which is really only a small 2, 4, maybe 6 month window in the life of a student. That time when they finish the complete high school, going into that first semester in a university setting. And again, as was already discussed, so much of what success means is outside of the classroom. I think your survey showed that very well, in that the students saw that what prepared them the most was what they experienced outside the classroom. And so often what is neglected, I think, as we think about the student success journey is that time between high school graduation and moving to a university. It's a time of huge transition for students. Not just academic transition, but social transition, perhaps a transition across continents, across the country, maybe even across the other side of the city, all of which is significant for the student. And this time in between high school and college, it's no longer about GPA. It's no longer about test scores. A perfect GPA, perfect SAT score isn't going to help much during this time. And just think about some of the differences as students are going from high school setting to a college setting, all the changes that they're going to experience. Now, I'm looking at this with a very American lens, but often students are used to going from elementary through high school with a set schedule, whether that's 8 to 3, 8 to 5, that varies based on culture, based on country, but there's a very set schedule. And when students are transitioning to a university setting, they might be in the classroom for 1 hour on a given day. They might have a semester where they only have classes 3 days a week. What type of responsibility do students have to have? What type of time management skills do they have to be successful? Or think about students that are not used to managing their own budget. And yet when they travel across that city, across the country, or across the continent, or in a different continent, and now they have to buy groceries, now they have to pay rent, now they have to navigate transportation cost. What type of new responsibilities for them to really thrive and be successful? How can universities and high schools partner together or to better prepare students during that time of transition, whether it's incoming student programs or if it's the high schools preparing their graduates that once you cross that stage is not the final step, but are they prepared to enter the university successfully? And I think that there's some small things, there's small examples and big examples of this. It could be as small as, do the students know how to do their own laundry? To something as big as, can they navigate a university structure like financial aid or paying tuition? It's so much, and just like I said, success during this transition period, it's so much more than just academics. Because during the summer period, again, class rank no longer matters. The prestige of one high school no longer matters. It's all about, do they have the life skills to be successful once they reach a college campus? And often, the students that are not prepared to be successful, they realize that right away, from day one on our campus. Again, most students, as they arrive in a new country, maybe the next day is orientation, or maybe a few days in the future once they land. But it's a different skill set once they come to a college campus to be successful than what was required to get that high GPA in high school. Can they build connections with other peers? Can they network with peers, faculty, staff of these institutions to find resources? The students that are most successful, in my experience in my institution, are those that are willing to ask questions. Those that are willing to learn, those that are willing to talk, to ask questions, to listen. Some of the same things that were mentioned in the opening session this morning, like are they willing to listen, to speak? And we do a lot during the orientation weeks at institutions, especially in the U.S., at helping students build those connections. And something that I think is often overlooked, and I'm a firm believer that nearly every institution of higher education in the U.S. and abroad has a great deal of resources available to help students be successful. I'm not so sure that we teach students how to find those resources. Should universities do a better job at making these resources available? Absolutely. But could we also be preparing our students and maybe hand-holding them a bit less through the process and teaching them to navigate those processes? And so what does it mean to be successful? A student that can navigate the structures that they're in and find resources. And I think that's something that we see time and time again, because what I see from students that choose not to come back after their first semester at the university or after the first year, it's rarely the rigor of the academic experience. Students that come to the university are prepared academically almost every time, but it's students that were not prepared for all the other things that we mentioned. They were not prepared to live on their own. They were not prepared to navigate those university structures. They were not prepared to manage their time well with a looser schedule at the university. Almost every time when I would talk to students, like, oh, why aren't you coming back? It's usually connected to experiences outside of the classroom. And so this is really why, and I think Rita's survey really showed about what do we focus on during the first semester at an institution. We have groups that look at GPA and make sure that students are performing well in the classroom, absolutely. But at our institution, for example, there's a great deal of emphasis put on student engagement, students being involved in extracurricular activities. I'm in my 5th year of teaching a class called Foundations of Student Success, which nearly every first-year student at our institution takes. We talk about time management and study skills and all those very important things, but one of the most important things that we discuss is being involved. Maybe it's an academic club, maybe it's a sports organization, maybe it's a service-oriented organization, maybe it's a religious organization. Whatever those clubs and extracurriculars are, how are students involving themselves in that? One of the grades in this class is they meet with a peer who's just a year ahead of them in school and helps them find that place of engagement and connection on the campus. It's not just about GPA or grades or any of that, but are they involved? And again, as we look at what are the biggest predictors of success as far as we think about retention and graduation, which I think no one said graduation as a definition of student success, but as we look at retention and graduation, which are metrics that most institutions look at, engagement and students that take this foundational class to be and really help them become engaged, that is a much higher predictor than their GPA as we look at graduation and retention. I think that goes a long way to really show students see that. Students, they answered the survey, is they think that the extracurricular events, clubs, sports, whatever that may be, helped better prepare them to thrive in a university setting. And I think that's extremely true. And just the last thing I'm going to touch on is just the ability to ask questions. I think that students are not, when students come in not prepared, and students that are not successful are those ones that don't ask questions. They don't find those resources. They're timid. They've not been taught how to advocate for themselves. And so learning to ask questions, how are we preparing students, whether it's in high school, during orientation, during this first semester, to ask questions in the classroom, outside the classroom, in the community, wherever that is. And so look at what makes a successful student. Students that are intellectually curious, but also students that are curious and willing to ask questions and advocate and find resources. And so I'm going to transition to Shauna, who's going to talk a bit more about once they get through that first semester, once students go on to complete throughout their college experience, how some of this just continues to build on itself outside of just GPA.
Okay, I think we're on the right side now. So as Caleb said, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about retention at universities, so during their college career. So the historic focus at colleges has always been how many students are we getting in and looking at those admission numbers, and also the first destination rate, which is what after graduation, how many students are placed in a job or grad school or some meaningful experience in their career within 6 months of graduation. So I'm not going to lie, those are still important at the university, but they are really digging deeper and looking at retention as well and that student holistic experience. And I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs really demonstrates that well, because what they're realizing is students can't graduate and really be who they want to be and reach that self-actualization stage unless all their needs are being met. So just looking at surveys and why students are drop out of school, sometimes it's they just had a health crisis and had to drop out and they couldn't make tuition that month. A lot of times it's not feeling like they belong on campus, so developing that sense. Safety concerns or esteem. So there really is an increased focus at universities and really focusing on that. We even created a whole department called Student Success and Flourishing, which is really just looking at the data and what the student needs are and just making sure they have that sense of belonging, that health and wellness, academic support, and coaching. I mean, since COVID, health and wellness has been at its highest levels, especially in the U.S. So a lot of times they're contracting with something like timely care and making sure students have 24/7 support. So if they wake up in the middle of the night and are panicking, they can just reach a counselor at any time, just make sure their health and wellness is in check. And we have a very cohesive system at the university that we alert appropriate departments and just provide more wraparound support for the students. So it's not just like treated as one isolated department, but we're coming up and meeting the student together. Academic support, there's tutoring and learning support, and coaching is kind of a new thing too, is universities are really trying to be more proactive about student support. So not waiting until they are suspended from the university and being like, oh, you needed some academic help, how can we help you? But really implementing a university-wide coaching strategy of like, here's, like Caleb was saying, like here's some study skills, like here's some time management, like how are we going to implement this? Let's talk about your strengths. Let's find out what you're really good at and what you want to pursue. And these coaching strategies have shown to improve retention up to 5% at some universities. So I do have two more slides. One is more at a university-wide perspective, and one is more, I actually work directly with international students. I'm the PDSO. I work helping them with their immigration, and I am the one-stop shop for international students. So at the university level, these are some ways that our university is helping students persist, and it really is having that proactive engagement and making sure building community even prior to them coming to campus, and just feeling that sense of belonging and making sure they feel welcomed. There's early alerts and open communication among departments, again, just triggering, like, if there was a student concern with an international student, they're alerting me and pulling me into it too, since I know the student better and know their families and can really help them a little more. It's also really simplifying processes. I mean, we send so much information to students, it's overwhelming. So just having a one-stop shop on campus for international students, that's me. It's just like they might not know where to go, but I can bring them to the right person and just really help them through the processes and navigating some of that bureaucracy. The financial hardship, there are a lot of micro grants now at universities, just if they are that one-time need. Maybe the currency was devalued strongly that semester. Maybe they had a health crisis and they just need some money just to get through that one semester. It's a great incentive just to help them so they can keep persisting, and that's not what's causing them to drop out. And then, of course, the well-being is a huge priority as well. So in our International Student and Support Services Office, research is showing that, we used to focus on, students plugging in and kind of being in the campus community, but what it's really showing is they actually need to have that foundation with other international students first. They have that empathy. That's why international student orientation is so important. We also have mentors, so the returning international students are mentoring those incoming students just so that they can have someone that they can relate to and have that sense of belonging so that they can then develop relationships with domestic students and plug more into the community. Research is also showing the use of technology and how important it is, especially with this Gen Z. They love their technology. They love having things ready at a moment's notice. So really just making sure our workshops are in bite-sized amounts online, that if, they're up at 2 in the morning and they have questions, they can get some answers. There's some also great apps like Campus Community, which allows you to build community even before they come on campus. So all of our international students, there's a app called Campus Community, and you need a Belmont email address to get on it, so it's a safe community. We have 4 global ambassadors, so prospective students can reach out to them. They're kind of the mentors of the group. But if you just like, hey, I want to go for a hike, who likes hiking? Or who else is from India at Belmont? You can search through it. So it's just a great way to build more organic community, especially in this tech generation. We also have a lot of programming efforts just for international students and opportunities to meet domestic students, ongoing orientation. We know orientation, you can't learn everything in that 1 week, so just making sure that it's an ongoing thing there, especially their first year. And one of the biggest things for retention now is just data. Data is so important. It's overwhelming. There's so much data out there now. It's overwhelming for us. but I think it's really important to sort through it. I survey our students once a year, just finding out, where their hardships are, like what's going well, what isn't. And that's really what that student success comes to, because each generation, each year, it's a different set of students. So you really just need to tap into your students and what their needs are, and just be able to come alongside that and provide support. So we're constantly, re-navigating on what we need to offer to them. And then lastly is cultural competency training. So not only do I help students integrate into the U.S., tell them I'm kind of their American mama, whether they're like, if they are performing or anything, like I'm the one-stop shop in the U.S., but I also think it's really important to instruct the teachers and staff on developing their cultural competency, and notice, like, if there is a student quiet, like it might just be cultural differences. So that's something that we're implementing on campus as well. And with that, I will hand it over to Dan to talk about career and vocational aspirations.
All right, thank you. So at my university, I have a couple different roles. I'm over our international initiatives. I'm also the dean of the graduate school, and so I interact with first year students all the way through the graduate school, and then with our alumni a bit as well. I've seen. Well, I'm old. I'm 55 now, and I think about the discussions and the way that I thought about going to university, and I was very fortunate in that my parents. Well, and I'm going to back up on that. Yes, I was fortunate in that my parents gave me options. They said, "Where do you want to go?" They weren't telling me where to go, And for me, going to college university was definitely the experience. Going there and having this college experience, they never asked me whether you have to major in this, or it was a question, have you decided on a major? And I went to a liberal arts college where you couldn't decide your major until the end of your second year, right? So quite different from many cultures in the world. But nowadays, I hear much more about ROI, so return on investment. What is the return on investment at your university? And when I'm out recruiting, it's a huge part of how I promote my university. So I know that there's the pressure coming from students coming from different economies. The amount of a family's capital that they're putting into it could be multi-generations. It could be, different parts of the family that are coming together to help that student achieve that academic goal. So this is something that I've seen change quite a bit. And if you pay attention to the U.S. News World Reports, they recently added best value as one of the rankings, right? So obviously everyone say, well, what's your ranking? So, well, in the United States or whatever country we're ranked this, but if you dig in a little bit deeper, now there's a best value ranking, which is really looking at how much it costs to obtain that degree versus the salaries that their alumni make, right? And so when you're working with families and they're saying, is this the right choice? Now you have another level that you can kind of share them. So like this institution may not have the best name, it might not be well known, but 97% of their graduates are getting employed and starting at $75,000 a year, right? So it's another way of looking at the discussion. So those success rates, like I just mentioned, all universities, at least in the U.S., are keeping records on where their alumni are going to, how quickly they're getting jobs, how long they're staying there. And so most institutions, there's kind of a delay because they have to graduate, they have to get into the workforce, they have to collect the data. So there's usually about a year lag in when that information comes out. But when you're working with recruiters, you should ask them those questions and say, okay, well, what percentage are getting jobs? In what fields are they getting those jobs? What are the average salaries that the students are making? And what you can also then say is, what institutional partnerships does your university have? Right? So a lot of that is based on geography. So if you're in an area where there are a lot of companies, there's going to be more opportunities for those partnerships. But you also have universities that might be in rural areas that are then going out and making sure that there are 1-week internship opportunities, summer opportunities, where they can go anywhere. It could be the United States, it could be internationally, right? So those partnerships really can make a difference if you have a student who's like, I don't want to be in a big city, but I also want to get a job, right? So it is possible. So as we heard with my friends here, that taking advantage of the opportunities on campus is so important. It's sad when you see an international student come in and they make excellent grades, but then you realize that that's their only life, right? That they go back to their room, they watch YouTube, they play video games. Well, I guess that is kind of a social experience these days, but and I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about career services. So if we're relating a college experience to ROI, the universities that have strong career services will serve the students better. So students really at any stage can take advantage of the services that they offer. So obviously they would need to work on their resume. So at my institution, they make an appointment, they bring in their resume. There's an expert who says, okay, this is what U.S. companies are looking for. This is what it looks like. These are the key words that you need to have in there, because who's going to read a resume first these days? AI is going to read it, right? And so if you have those keywords, then it's more likely to make its way in front of a person, right? And so experts can help our students with that. Interview practice, right? Just in the same way that we got together and we practiced this presentation before we came up here. You would want to do practice before going in for an actual interview. Most career services offices will also help you build your LinkedIn profile, and most importantly, job fairs. Right, so this is a picture from my institution. So every spring we have over 100 employers that come on campus. They're scanning the students' information, taking their resumes, scheduling interviews, and so most schools these days will have opportunities like this. Obviously, bigger institutions will have more opportunities for on-campus employment. I'm at a small institution, less than 2,000 students, and so it's competitive. Almost all international students, if they're not an athlete, are saying, can I work on campus? And I say, yes, but it's competitive. And so I advise them, we have a platform that they can see the jobs that are available. They can apply, put in their resume, but I advise them, after you apply for that job, go to the office, introduce yourself. You don't have to call them, you don't have to email them. Just go in there, introduce yourself, say, I'm interested in the job, and then go away, right? Because then they've got the face, they've got the application in that they can make the connection. If they're knocking on the door every afternoon, they're probably not going to get the job, because that's the annoying student, right? So, volunteering. This is something that when I'm talking with international students, I stress over and over again the importance that volunteering can have in your professional development skills, right? So let's take, for example, that you go to a volunteering site with 5 students that you don't know, and you're working with teenagers in a community center on math skills. Just think about all of the different language skills that they're being exposed to from teenagers from a different culture. Think of the problem skills that they're developing working with those teenagers from a different background, right? All of that transfers into the classroom. Next thing you know, when they're doing a project with classmates, they're bringing those skills into it, and they become a stronger student because of it. As my colleagues mentioned, all universities have multiple clubs, and so many of them have professional ones as well. So if you're an engineering student, there's an engineering club, which if you become active in, there are opportunities for scholarships, presenting at conferences, getting things published, doing research with your professors. So very important. And then finally, CPT. So in the United States, the way that you can legally do an internship off campus. Since after COVID, I see, at least in our area, the majority of CPT positions pay, whereas before that it was almost always volunteer. So this is a nice change that we've seen since the pandemic. And then finally, post-graduation, we do have the OPT system in the United States. And so even when you're advising students who are 17, 18 before they go, make sure that they know what it is. Even if you just kind of mention, this is something that you're going to do 4 years from now. But it's very sad when you have a student who just through a mistake, they didn't pay attention to a detail on their I-20, and because of that, they had to leave the country, come back in. They were able to graduate, but they lost their opportunity to work in the United States because of that. Sadly, it happens more often than you would think. I assume most of you are familiar with the OPT system, but just in case, I'll say that, so every international student on an F1 visa that graduates can work for 1 year legally in the United States in a field related to their major. If they are in a STEM qualified major, they can add 2 years onto that. Obviously, H-1B is something that gets talked a lot about, and it seems like the regulations change. You'll get the promises, there's going to be more slots available. So this is something that as they are going through their university career, again, they should be aware of and just kind of see where things are. And then in the same way that you would want to network before you arrive to the university, at the university, once you graduate, you want to network as well with the students coming in. Right? So if you are sending students to the same university year after year, make sure that those that those graduates are helping those newcomers in and helping them through the system. I added this picture, and I didn't really even think about it, but this student came to my office. He was about 3 months from graduating. He was getting a master's degree in computer information systems, and he sat down in my office and he said, I don't really like my major. My passion is drawing, and I don't know what I want to do for a career. So he was probably 27, 28 at this point, then kind of having a crisis. And I said, well, I have some friends in ad agencies. They're on the creative side, so let me call them and see what they suggest. And sure enough, they quickly came up with several careers that have that tech background, related in a more artistic field. And so he was able to put out some resumes, working happily today. So because I had that network, actually, I was able to share that with him. But, fortunately he came in and said, I'm a little unhappy, can you help me? And so asking for help, asking questions can go a long way. Okay, so I think with that, we are ready for some questions and answers. So if my friends want to come up here. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. I was just thinking, I work with a high school, and while change is normal and the transition can be difficult for anyone, how do you identify what are some of the regular ways of coping, and where is it that you see that you're talking about challenges?
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, what are the markers for it? Like, what are you seeing actually happen that is making you feel like the kids are struggling? Am I clear with what I mean?
So, like, how do we notice that they're struggling?
Yeah, like I feel like 6 months is a good enough time for transitioning, and
Mm-hmm.
It would be expected.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you feel like they're struggling, why is it that you feel that?
Well, something that Shauna mentioned is that a lot of universities now have these kind of platforms where any faculty or staff member can raise a concern, right? So you have a professor who's in a class and says, this student has missed 3 classes in a row, or even appears sad, and so puts in that concern. And so at my institution, there's a group called the Student Outreach Network where you have members from all over the campus that meet, and then if there's a large enough concern, they'll actually have a discussion and come up with a plan for that student. I don't know, Shauna?
Yeah, I think it's just developing those relationships, especially at some smaller campuses. Like if you're not in class one day, the professor's reaching out to you, like, are you okay? And like if they don't hear back, they might reach out to like student care and concern and flag that concern. So I think it's just having people check in with them. We've also mentioned having mentors on campus. So like those global ambassadors are checking in with all new students at least once a month, like, hey, are things going? So the whole purpose is giving that student a community. So whether it's me or one of our students or student concern, just having some person on campus, hopefully out of one of us, they feel comfortable enough to approach us and inform us what's going on so we can help navigate them. But I think class attendance, what are some things that we trigger?
I can just add one thing to
Yeah,
that
go
too.
ahead.
I think that for us, we really lean into the first semester, that orientation, that Foundations for Student Success class, where there's orientation leaders. And so we have students that are, they lead a small group of 10 other students that they check in with all through the first semester. And so it's often our orientation leaders actually that are saying, hey, this student they're not involved in anything yet. I've been checking in with them throughout the semester. Really, it's our the students' peers that are raising some of those concerns, just for us to check in or raise the alerts on the different systems. But
I was trying to understand what is it that shows up in the child that makes you think that they're not able to adjust, because everyone might take time to transition, but what are some of the things you see often that are
in terms of behavior?
And to the question, I would say, do you have people, like when children come from, like you said, from various places, right? So when they come, obviously they're dealing with a lot of emotional changes and also you also have specialized, faculty members to take care and, tell them apart from the peer. It makes a lot of difference. Sometimes peer can be a little nasty, at some times. So do you have those specialized people to help them and come out of the, space they're in?
So I'd say it exists at different levels. So I would say the most basic level is at the dorm, where you have a resident advisor who has some minimal training to recognize, okay, this student hasn't taken out their trash in 3 weeks, or maybe a roommate makes a comment. And so there's probably some discussion that goes on, some observation. Can I help you is probably the first step. And then we can't tell a student to go to counseling, but we can tell them that the services are available, right? So it's
at least someone to take care, not use the word, someone to take care and understand what the child is going through.
Right, and so I think we all have counseling on our campuses, and we actually use a health insurance company that also has online resources in the student's first language, right? And so it may not be available that moment, but they can request it, and then they have counseling in their first language as well.
Also, does this work for bigger universities? When it comes to smaller colleges, for the smaller number of students, it's much more amicable and easier, I would say. But when it comes to big public universities, does this work the same way?
Can I answer this question?
Yeah, I've worked at larger institutions. I think it just varies by institution. Some of them have some mechanisms in place, but of course, if you're sitting I've been in class, I went to Penn State with 120 students, like the professor's not checking in on you, but they still have RAs and people looking out. It's just a little bit more siloed, I think, where some universities do have just a more concerted effort where, if the RA hasn't seen them in a few days, they might alert their resident director, which will alert me. If they notice their meal swipes haven't been used, and their roommate doesn't know where they are, they'll start looking into it. If a professor's like, this student used to be engaged, but now they're being withdrawn, they might reach out to us. So it looks different depending on what the students are. We even have health insurance. So if I see some claims going, I just reach out to a student and be like, hey, do you need help with this claim? What's going on? Do you need support? So there's just so many triggers on campus now, and I think it's growing. So it's just nice to have that concerted effort, where before it used to be very siloed, the RA would just tell their resident director and they would just try and handle it. Where now I just feel like the communication is just so more, we get more emails than less. So it's just kind of nice being able to stay up on what's going on with the students.
And that's a really good example. If you can see on their card use that they're not using it to eat, that's a pretty significant, I know you
had a comment.
Actually, so I also represent the university, and many of the universities, especially in UK, they also have buddies or mentors who are like, you met these people, the first year student met these people in the orientation, and these are like second year students and third year students who are, so we don't call them counselors, or we don't call them, we give them a name. It's just a friend or a buddy or a mentor who. Yeah, so this really helps a lot. Like these guys, they have been there.
They are there for the
First year.
entire year.
Yeah, for the entire year. Yes, yeah. So it's 1-to-1. So every student would have one specific mentor every year. So that really helps us understand what they're going through, and they have also been there in the first year, so they know what they might go through. So that really helps us understand. And then we have these guys, they report to the international experience team. So we have a dedicated international experience.
5 minutes, okay.
People coming from different universities, different countries. Yeah, there is someone. So there's always an international experience team. Yes.
Yeah,
Who
there's
will
mentors
take care
too.
of every single thing. So be it food, be it scams which are happening around, or be it what kind of education system they're coming from, because UK or US would have different education systems than India. So they really help in that aspects, so that they are comfortable, they know, and they're quite used to it. So that is there in place. And then I guess a lot of activities also happens where
Right.
they take students to trips and show cinemas and stuff, so they get used to the environment.
I think we had another question back here. Yeah.
This is a very different question from what everybody's been asking so far. My name is Pooja Shabir. I'm from Vedanta Academy, Chennai. My question is, though you say there's a career counseling center in the university, and children who are doing academically well, who are doing internships on campus jobs and everything, unfortunately, if you are from India and maybe outside the US, it so happens very often that you do not get an internship. So you have to come back to your country for the internship. So when you talk about success, and the student is doing everything right, volunteering, going to clubs, professional and academic clubs in the school, in university, and also doing well academically, doing on-campus jobs. Unfortunately, they do not get an internship. In every internship, if they ask, are you looking for sponsorship in the future? And the minute you click yes, your application is out for it. So how does a student coming from India get any opportunity in the US?
So our career services said, when they came and talked to our international students, they said that, a lot of companies, so it does ask if you have work authorization, and they can answer yes to that question, because with the EAD card with OPT, they have work authorization for that year, but there is a question if they need future sponsorship, which they would also have to mark yes. But our career services just says, in this market, like our parents' generation would be at the same career 30 years, right? Like but with this current generation, with this Gen Z, 1 to 3 years is usually all they're lasting at jobs before they're off to the next job. So in the US, there's just so much turnover. So there is, committing for that year is looked at as a positive things. And our career services really trains our international students to develop the skills they do have. Do you know how many US Americans speak multiple languages? Not that many. The students here just offer so many more possibilities, especially for these global employers. We do have a top 100 list of employers that sponsor H-1Bs, so I think some companies are more prone to hire H-1Bs than smaller companies that might not have it. And then with OPT, if they aren't able to find a job right away, I do encourage them to do, if you work unpaid internships or even volunteer opportunities related to your major, that at least stops the OPT clock and gives you some experience so that you can maybe be more hireable with hiring it for a business on OPT. But you might have some more.
And so I do a lot of recruiting in various countries, but especially I think here in India, the narrative about job availability in the US, we're actually not feeling that so much in the US. I think the narrative is much stronger when you hear Google, Meta, whatever, cutting this many jobs. And I think it would be also good to look at regionally where you see job growth versus job decline, and where you see people migrating in the United States. And so, we're fortunate to be in an area where people are migrating to, and there is job growth. And so our international students aren't facing quite the same difficulties that the universities on the coasts are facing.
Just one quick add to that. I think that something that I've seen, the students that have struggled to find those jobs are also the students that came to our career services and said, hey, I need to start OPT in 3 months. And it's students, and we really try to get to students, let them know about career services much earlier than that. So as they're in their first or second year at the institution, how are they already going through that process and not waiting until that last semester? Again, the sample size is relatively small, but a lot of students that I've talked to that have struggled to find internships are also those that started the process much too late.
And sorry to say that I got from experience. I can remember my own son.
Mm.
Having a 3-year OPT when he couldn't get a job after doing everything. It is a truth that it is difficult to get a job if you say you need a sponsorship.
It's true.
Unfortunately, after the so-called ROI that was spoken about, after you've studied and you've done everything right, you're going to come back.
Well, I believe our time is up. So we want to thank you all for coming, and
Thank you.
hopefully after the meal we didn't put you to sleep. So thank you so much.